Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. The town of Smithers acknowledges the Gidimt'en clan and the Wet'suwet'en people on whose traditional territory we live, work, and play. Do I have to read the webcast? Because, no, okay, skip that. We need to approve the agenda. Councillor Patterson? Okay, all in favor? That's approved. Next up, public comment period. There's one fella back there, Mr. Banstra. Are you wanting to speak tonight?
I think so.
Nice. Okay. You know the drill. Okay. So I know you know the drill, but you have 3 minutes to speak to tonight's meeting.
All right. So I'm Mark Banstra. Don't think we give addresses anymore. I just want to follow up. I had written a letter to council and it was on your agenda a month ago, I think. And so I just want to highlight a couple of things and maybe leave one question. The reason I kind of was motivated to write a letter is I just see and feel some stress that I see in the business community. I look at Main Street, I look at the buildings. And there's one area that, of course, the town's actively involved in, and that's taxation. And I gave some examples just on a few pieces of commercial property of anywhere from 40 to a 65% increase in raw dollars on a few commercial properties, depending where they are. Just to say, I'd really challenge council to, and I know you do this, but I'm asking for maybe another level of spending less, putting less tax burden on the taxpayer. I'm not going to go through all my letter. Again, I encourage you to reread it. I think our overheads have increased exponentially over and above what our tax base has improved by. And really the only income that we have as a community on a tax base level is by taxing property value, whether it's residential or commercial. And of course we have grant funding. So when I look at how much more staff we're carrying, how many more projects we're taking on, some of it's grant funded, some of it's in our reserves, but I look at our reserves and our reserves are weakening. All this just to say is I'm asking, it's probably going to be of the next council because that'll be the next budget, even though some things might come into play over the next number of months. Yeah, just to probably a review, like a forensic review of what we're offering, what we're spending in relation to the size of our community. I do have one question that I wanted to leave with you, and that's just actually on your tax base. So while I was away, I came back and I see taxes went from 4.39 to 4.92. So obviously, I haven't read it in detail. Something else has come up, but there is still a credit of $146,000 that was used in your 4.37%. So it'll be also in your 4.92, which was revenue increases. And I understand that is basically a one-year thing. We've got some extra interest income that's fallen into our lap that wasn't quite planned for. So it helps to reduce the taxation level because we've already committed to the expenditure. What happens next year? This is a one-year thing. So we got 4.92. That $146,000 equates to another 1.4, 1.5. So we're actually, just to round things off, we're around 6.5%, 6.4%. That's going to be the base going into next year's budget because you can't use that credit twice. So what's the plan? We're already leaving the next council in a very tough position. So I just leave that with you. It is. You can't, there's no answer for that. It is. But we're gonna have to deal with it, because that's going to be the base again for our next increase that goes onto the taxpayer. I'm probably well beyond my 3 minutes. I'll leave it there.
Okay, I was just
And
going to interrupt you.
I'd gladly talk with any of you anytime over a cup of coffee when it comes to finances. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your work. I really do appreciate it. And I'll sit back and listen to your meeting and your motions. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Mr. Banstra. I will actually just follow up a couple of your comments. Tonight is the first time council is seeing the 4.92, and Mr. Welsh will be speaking to that increase and explaining why that has increased and hopefully ease some of your concern. We have gone through it together. So anyway, you will be hearing about that shortly. And I do agree with you. I think cost pressures in life and business, you know, they are getting extreme and they're affecting everybody, all of us. And I'm very aware, and this council knows that we talk about it all the time, and we do throw these ideas around and discuss them. And it's very much on our radar as we go through the budget process. So appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so with that said, we'll move on to 6.1, and Mr. Welsh is going to present, has a presentation for the final consolidated budget, 2026 to 2030 financial plan. So I'll just pass it over to Mr. Welsh and we'll go from here.
Thank you very much, Councilor Leonard. Hi, Mayor and Council. Today I'm presenting the final 2026 consolidated financial plan. And after this, we'll be looking to prepare the 5-year financial plan. We have discussion next rate on tax rates, and we'll have to set up our tax rate policy. Over the past several months, we've kind of gone through the budget process, including the budget approach in October, the draft operating capital budgets, the consolidated budget, an updated consolidated budget, and tonight what should be the final financial plan and minor public engagement going through this process. Yeah, going forward, next week we have tax rate setting scheduled for April 7th, and then April 28th, we should have our first reading of our financial plan and our tax rate bylaw, followed by May 12th, which should be the financial plan, tax rate bylaw adoption, and our financial statement approval. As we discussed before, the proposed property tax increase in the current financial plan is 4.92. There was a slight minor increase, as I noted in previous slides and in the report from the previous report of the tax increase. This is due to an adjustment for our cost sharing between the regional district for our service area for recreation and culture, along with our fire service area. And when I got the assessment roll, the town of Smithers assessments increased a little bit higher than the regional district, switching the regional district share from 29.91% down to 29.11%. A lot of this priority is kind of going forward is my position has been empty. This is the first year since the 2024 budget season where there's a person, the director of finance. So a lot of my approach with this is I like to start from the bottom is organization stabilization, getting a baseline and kind of reviewing how we do everything going forward. Some of the other key things are the capital budget. It's mostly completion of previously approved infrastructure projects. A lot of them are carry forwards and wrapping up what council committed. The one new exception is the new library projects due to the purchase of the new building. Some general equipment replacements and asset management renewals. Kind of thinking a bit more of how we're kind of financing everything going forward and setting a baseline for new council to determine how to go forward. Big thing I like to shift in is our operating costs of the town. Our operating budget is $25.3 million. The main ones to see is our biggest cost is with just over $3 million is the RCMP. Second in line is the cost of our utility funds, which is our water and sewer system. That's funded though by separate user fees and not taxation. Our third biggest high-risk cost is our transfers to reserve, which is what we contribute for capital projects. And then the next big one is corporate services and going down. So how everything is spread across, and this is kind of the baseline I'm setting up in 2026 for kind of tracking and monitoring this going forward. But this is the operating cost of the town. Capital expenses are coming in at 26.4 million. The largest costs are coming out of the utility fund, which is mostly the new sewer treatment plant and some infrastructure upgrades. Second largest one is development services at 4.8 million, consisting of a lot of that's paving, multi-use pathways, projects along those ones. So there's a spread of across. Our budget is 26.4 million for a capital project this year. The majority of these are completing already committed projects. As we talked about those, the Buckley Riverbank or stabilization. I can't even talk about that. Buckley Riverbank protection coming at 3.6 million. This is a carry forward project, which is expected to be completed in 2026, along with the Main Street multi-use pathway. It's a carry forward project to be completed in 2026, and same with Princess Street development. Protective services, our fire hall, that's a new one this year, but it required $225,000. Fire truck, which is due for replacement in 2027, which has to be procured in 2026. And then due to the relocation of the snow dump, the setting up the new fire training center at the airport, which is the cost of $660,000. The other one too is we have to replace a garbage truck in 2026. That's a cost of $520,000, along with the snowblower attachment due to the relocation of the snow dump. One of our regular programs is our road infrastructure renewal program. We had a $2 million budget for that last year. $1 million of that was funded from our reserves. The other $1 million was from RBA. So the budget for that has decreased this year. We've increased that slightly due to the cost. And that's the other reason why you see an increase in the infrastructure reserve of $125,000 to bring us to 1.1 million. Some other major costs in utility fund, as we saw, this has the highest budget, and that's due to $7.3 million for the sewer treatment plant, 1.4 million for the CN water main replacement, which is a carry forward project, along with 13th Avenue lift station replacement, an asset that's required to be replaced in 2026. Another one too is the biggest project, a new one, is the completion of the library community needs assessment. There's a $52,000 carryover from 2026 or 2025 into 2026. The detailed design of the library at 370,000. And we're forecasting a $3 million renovation of the library with 1.5 million happening in 2026, which will be financed by RBA funds, and another 1.5 million in 2027 to be funded through long-term debt. The plan for that is to roll forward the RBA funds for 1.5 million. Then any excess above that, up to 3 million, up to 1.5 million, to make the $3 million total, will be funded with long-term debt over 25 years. As you can see, most of our capital projects majority are funded by grants at 48%. Our next biggest funding source is short-term debt, coming in at 7.5 million. Reserve transfers. And then RBA is kind of the big pool of that one, and short-term debt is $820,000. Our long-term debt we're carrying on the books for quite a few years. It's a thing we have to service with taxpayer money. Main one of that is carry forwards. No surprise here, the previous reports. The 420 block, I have a typo in there, I'm sorry. It was $147,000 issued in 2023. Annual payments of $12,000. The arena, the second sheet of ice, $650,000 issued in 2014. It's carrying cost of $53,000. That's going to be paid off in April 2034. South Storm Sewer, $800,000. This is paid through the utility fund. This is covered by utility user fees. Annual payments of this are $54,000, and this is to be paid off in April 2026. So next month. Nice to see. And the largest one is the airport terminal expansion, which occurred in 2017 of $3 million. And that's requiring annual payments of $206,000. And this is all funded through the revenues generated from the airport. Big one noting up too, and a new change you'll see in the budget and also on the town's balance sheet is equipment financing. The recent practice in 2024 and 2025 is to purchase new capital equipment through the MFA's equipment financing program, which is financing these equipments over like a 5-year program. In 2025, we've issued all these amounts. There was a debt from 2024 that was not issued during the year due to the vacancy in the director of finance position. That was all caught up during the 2025 fiscal year, and the amount issued. The more interesting line is next page, please. Oh, sorry. One of these, we have 2 planned of this is $520,000 and $300,000 to the snowblower. Next page, Sam. The main one to show for this is the carrying costs of this equipment. The equipment was purchased this way by financing this due to the lack of reserves in the machinery and equipment, and they were using the funds going into the machinery and equipment reserve to cover the payments for this. Eventually this, I'd like to shift this to be going forward where the new purchases I've been adding, including the new 100 or Ford F-150 we purchased in 2026 for $150,000 to be purchased outright with cash. And that's one of the things of building up reserve. It'll be a cheaper cost in the long run, but transitioning from one approach to the other, because we have some mandatory asset replacements. But this was a new cost incurred on our balance sheet in 2025. And it'll show up in the financial statements. And it's just how we've been in the past funding equipment due to kind of low reserves. Main as we talked about during the capital or the cost of the town is how we fund our reserve contributions. Big amount of that is 2.8 million going in reserves this year, split 2.6 million between capital reserves and $113,000 with operating reserves. The main ones for those is like the council fund for the elections, what's going to the community forest in some general items. Reserve forecasts have included and also attachment on the end is as we've kind of seen our reserves are quite high at the end of 2025, but that's mostly due to the balance in RBA, which is going to be spent over the next couple of years, along with some of the funds like the Northern Capital Planning Grant has been fully allocated at the end of 2025 or end of 2026. So our surplus is our piggy bank and what also floats operations for a period of time. So the three funds down there, as noted, the airport came in a little bit under or in a better financial position than was forecasted as we kind of review kind of things going the end of the year. But as you can see, that was forecasted and drawn down due to the operating costs of the airport being higher than the revenue. It's something we're kind of addressing with and work with the airport manager on, along with our surplus as our piggy bank to kind of float. Some previous projects said the surplus has been or projects been funded by surplus draws. I generally am not a big fan of using that approach. Our surplus is a piggy bank. It also works for rate stabilization. It kind of covers and kind of keep forward. It's also our working capital for the year as our tax revenue comes in during the period of around August. In between January and June or July, you normally have to float cash and have your working capital on hand. I did have some changes as I talked about since the last budget. Unfortunately, two of them are unfavorable. That is due to the change in the regional district assessment base. Their portion decreased and our portion went up. So this caused our recreation and culture contribution to increase by $11,000. Same with our fire and rescue contribution. So that is the 0.35% change you've seen, along with our change in the grants and aid. We've also had $3,000 removed from the last budget due to the shifting of the financing of the library to be first funded with RBA instead of long-term debt. So the $3,000 increase in interest costs in the 2026 budget. A couple other minor changes is unfortunately we had to return the community grant for $10,000 just due to timing, unfortunately. So I've now funded that at a surplus. Our ESS special project grant was not renewed from UBCM in 2026. So I've had to decrease the operating costs from $150,000 to $34,000 just for the grant carryover as this grant runs from May to April. We've council elected to extend the encampment security to November 2026 at a cost of $320,000. So that's not reflected in the budget, and that's funded by RBA. And the cemetery, I've had to add a one-time setup fee of $10,000 for a pre-need trust to be established, which is a legal requirement, and I've funded that as a transfer from surplus. So there is no tax or property tax impact on that one. As noted before, the change of the library is now funded from RBA as opposed to long-term debt first. And I had a couple of changes in the capital budget, which is just that carryover of the HVAC project, which is funded at a surplus of $106,000. And just an adjustment of the sewer treatment plant budget down $93,600 due to expenses occurred in 2024. Overall project budget stayed the same. It's just a timing issue between 2025 and 2026. Main one to note is due to reconciliations at year end, the Northern Capital Grant was fully subscribed. So I've had to reallocate the fire electrical upgrades at $225,000 to be funded out of the fire equipment reserve. And also the UBCM grant for fire radios was not renewed in 2026. So that adjustment has been removed from the 2026 capital budget. As noted, the change for this was due to for the fire electrical upgrades was due to a grant for the Cycle 16 connector, which unfortunately due to the budget cycle, the grant got double booked from one year to the other. So I had to double book the grant and I had to replace a $500,000 spot. So I've used that with the Northern Capital Planning Grant, along with a slight upgrade of $76,000 for infrastructure upgrades to cover the remaining costs of the Cycle 16 connector in 2026. Next slide, Sam. The other option is that we just use to fund the fire upgrades instead of out of the fire equipment reserve, because part of my approach is by stabilizing this reserve for the purchase of the new fire truck out of RBA funds. But I believe the fire electric reserve should be coming out of the fire reserve as opposed to RBA, but it is an option to fund it with RBA. But I would recommend just keeping up the fire and electrical out of the fire equipment reserve in 2026. And that's majority of things kind of run through what we're seeing in the 2026 financial plan. Again, the focus of this is state organization stabilization, committing to already committed to product or already committed to projects, and kind of getting a baseline to roll in the next council, committed things we've already committed to. The next two steps you'll see for me is the recommendation to prepare the financial plan. And I also have to prepare a $1.5 million borrowing bylaw for the library renovation. Fun stuff to talk about. I would love to field any questions or discussion. But that's the process for this. No drastic changes, nothing super incrementally put in, with the exception of a couple changes. And the new big project council implemented in 2025 to be carried forward to 2026 is the new library renovation, a new library building.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. That was a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I guess I'll look to council if there's questions. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair Leonard. Question through to Mr. Welsh. Thank you for the presentation. Do you have any considerations or advice for council long-term, thinking about the RDBN and that assessment change? Or do you think that's just a one-off?
The assessment change will fluctuate over time. So that is one thing to be concerned about. The one thing I'm really concerned about mostly is the service area and the taxation limits for the recreation and culture cost sharing agreement with the regional district. We're with the change of assessments, it's the spending patterns coming in. We're at the very top threshold of the amount. If you give me 1 second. Sorry, I was trying to find the yes. There is a cap limit with this. The maximum requisition in 2026 is about $645,000. And then our total cost coming in under this agreement is $595. So there's about $50,000 a room. As we kind of shift forward, we're getting really kind of close to that line. So what that means is we got to review what costs are shared under this and how we're funding them. Or otherwise that cost, once we hit the maximum amount from the regional district, the town of Smithers taxpayers will be borrowing the full expenses of any amount assessed over that. So the one thing with this is our costs of the library are funded under this cost sharing agreement. So this is something to be reviewed kind of during the 2026 period as we stabilize and look forward of how to operate under this and with the capacities and limitations of under this agreement.
If I may, Chair Leonard, just a quick question. Do we have a date of when we start to renegotiate the terms of that agreement?
The terms of the agreement is expiring at the end of 2026. So this would be a discussion for the regional district to renew this agreement. However, we may be bound by their taxation limits because I would require them to have changes of their internal bylaws. That'd be a larger discussion and something to start talking with them during 2026.
Thank you.
If I may, is it provincially legislated? I don't know. Again, it's that funding model between regional districts
Correct.
and
Nope.
towns. So it is an actual agreement that we negotiated with the regional district.
It is an agreement we negotiate with the regional district. So yes, we'll have to review what the allocations of costs in that one. But yeah, and then they have to deal with their own taxation bylaws for whether they choose to up the requisition limits or not. But that's determined by them, not us. But yes, we have that agreement up for renewal in 2026. And given that library is covered under the recreation and cultural part, it should be something we should kind of investigate and look at what our circumstances are for funding under this and our options going forward.
Thank you. Mayor Atro.
Yeah, just to that topic, I think there is value for council as this comes forward, probably to meet both with Mr. Welsh and Mr. Illish from the Regional District of Okanachaco. I think I've had these agreements explained to me many, many times, and it's a complex arrangement. And there will be challenges on the RD side as well. You know, they're servicing bylaws. that will have to be redone. So it would be good for council to understand them as best we can and find out what the appetite is at the RD side as well to revisit these. Since I've been at council, we've been worried about this moment in time. We've crept closer all the way. And my understanding is, and perhaps you just said it, we have 2 bylaws and the other one, we're not near the threshold yet.
Correct. Correct. There's a fair amount of room in the fire service agreement. However, the rec and culture, we're getting a little bit closer to like what our threshold is with that.
So I guess my suggestion would be we get through this and as we're looking forward at some point that Director Illish also come and sort of help provide some clarity on what it is together with Mr. Welsh and what the possibilities might be at the RD table on how that might be, if we can crack that ceiling, so to speak.
Okay. Mr. Dewar, I'm just saying that that's noted for a future meeting. Okay. Councillor Ray.
So 2 things, just because of the change in assessment, the RD bill portion of your tax bill, Smithers had the highest increase, and so we're going to bear a lot of that, although the tax increase from the RD isn't very large, so that's a blessing for us. The other thing is, I believe that if we want, if area A is to increase the culture and rec portion of the budget, it has to be done by referendum. So there is a little bit of added complications to that. Part of our job perhaps is to be talking to area A residents and sell them on the benefit that they're getting from the rec and culture. So there is that. I have a question, entirely different thing for Mr. Walsh, and it's just regarding the 2 projects that had to be funded through the infrastructure reserve and then the fire reserve. Are the numbers that you presented to us, because I kind of looked through the reserves, they still look fairly healthy with these 2 coming out?
Councillor Ray, yes, the main thing you'll notice in the reserve forecast provided is now the Northern Capital Planning grant is fully allocated. Previously, there was about $223,000 I had in my carry forwards. So that's been updated, and our infrastructure reserve was the other one I pulled about $78,000 for. We can see that one with the recent increases to fund kind of towards asset maintenance and future planning. I have a slight uptick in that reserve building. And then, yes, a slight downtick in the fire equipment reserve, but however, I have a reasonably healthy balance with that. Thank you to due to our recent allocation of funding that fire truck in 2026 with some RBA funds. So it's been a kickstart into that. And my forecast was a little low when I prepared year end, so the balance came a little bit higher. But it's one of those things we can kind of feather in going forward. But it was unfortunate, just one of the things of my role being empty and transitioning to this in 2025.
Yeah, so I definitely appreciate the difficulties trying to, ever since COVID, it's been a bit of trying our best, but a bit of a dog's breakfast. While I have the floor, I will support doing this rather than taking the money out of the RBA. I think we've had enough discussion about the RBA to know that how it is probably the best way to end up, and it's good. I was concerned about the stuff, the 225 coming out of the fire infrastructure or fire equipment reserve, but knowing that that we're still on track to be able to start purchasing some things with cash is a good thing.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Anybody else? Looking over this side. Mayor Attrell.
Yeah, thanks. Just for clarity on the process, so with the recommendations that are here, some of the either ors that are highlighted in the backup documents, if we support the recommendations that are here, then the first choices will be those that are followed. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. No other questions? There is a recommendation. There's 2 recommendations. While they're not on the table yet, I need somebody. Councillor Raven. Councillor Patterson, you have a question? Okay.
Thank you, Chair Leonard. So is it appropriate if I want to vote against well, two, that we move them separately, or do you wish to move them together as a block?
Whatever the table wishes, yeah, we can move them separate. Okay, so let's, Counselor Ravens moving recommendation 1. Do we need to second? No, no seconder, yeah. Discussion? Counselor Ray?
I just, thanks to staff for preparing this, and I think we've had some very good discussions about this. I think one thing, through to some of Mr. Bannister's comments, and there, I think he's speaking for some people in the community for sure. Just how lucky we've been to get some of the grant funding that we have. And if you look at some of the projects, the Hudson Bay water main replacement, for example, $1.4 million. That's the kind of stuff that our taxes should have been taxed for the moment they put that in the ground. And we've, as a society, and it's every town, we've enjoyed lower taxes than maybe we might have, or we've made different choices with the taxes that we have because we haven't been funding that sort of thing. And now we're moving into asset management, and there's going to be some costs, and there's going to be some difficult conversations. I think the library will be probably our first difficult conversation about the level of service that comes with the new building. That's going to have to be a community conversation. But a lot of the new sidewalks we put in last year, RBA money, those are the kinds of things that we wouldn't be getting if we were looking at taxes probably. And there's some other things at play, like we've been adding to the infrastructure reserve every year to pay for paving, and it's gone from about 400,000 to 1.1 million, and we're really not getting a lot more paving than we used to. Just the inflation on that cost has been huge, and I my tax bill is going to go up quite a bit because my assessment went up way more than everything, and I do hear the businesses how much it is, but we still have to pay for everything. And I've been on council for a long time, and we look at this every year, and there's not a lot of fat to trim. A lot of the staff that's been added has been for organizational purposes, but also from requirements from the province. There's a lot of requirements that have been downloaded on our staff. Some of them probably every company has to, like health and safety. That's a lot bigger with the changes to WCB and everything. But I hope everybody knows how much we feel this. We all pay tax bills. There's business owners at the table. So yeah, I think, as always, any suggestions to lessen the tax load would be welcomed. But I really think that council wears this very heavily, and we make our decisions with the best interests of everybody at heart.
Mayor Attrell.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not going to repeat what Councillor Ray said, though. Thank you for saying it. I think what it suggests to me is how we think about the communication forward. This was the public opportunity. These meetings are never well attended by the public. I think we know that. But folks will, at some point, they're going to notice this budget, and how we communicate what's happening will matter. And we make an effort at that every year. So this comes with no criticism, but this year, there's going to be some extra messaging regarding RBA. It speaks a little bit to what Councillor Ray said. We're seeing a shift from the Northwest Regional Hospital District. People see those on their tax bills and have trouble discerning it. You care what the thing is. What do I have to pay when I get to the bank? And what's on that tax bill isn't all it's not all coming here. So, we're kind of in transition in terms of who's doing the communication. So I'm looking at Ms. LeBlanc because she's handled this well since she's been here, but how we deliver that message on service delivered for money also matters. And Councillor Ray has articulated some of that. So I think it's one of our opportunities is try to share with the public what we're doing, what portion of the bill relates to the community, and at least trying to give people the opportunity to understand what that tax bill is about how we got there and what the service provided is. You know, the other big one in there, and Mr. Welsh talked about it, is RCMP is a big bill. We're looking at a lot of security costs, and those are worth noting because generally I think those things are well received, but they are big bills. So we have an opportunity to try to tell the story as clearly as possible. Thanks, Chair Leonard.
I would also just like to say to Councillor Ray's point, and I know I'm the only one at the table that says this, but just because we do take advantage of those grants and the RBA money is there, it's still taxpayer money. And, you know, the business community, well, taxpayers, everybody's paying it, whether it's a grant or whether it's municipal taxation, we're paying more in tax all the way around, and federally, provincially. And businesses are burdened, I would say more so because there's hidden tax in work safe regulation changes, safety regulation changes. You know, every time you turn around, they're implementing a new tax on businesses. So it's tough out there, and it's tough on residents as well. Because ultimately for businesses to survive, they have to pass it on to the consumer. So we're all paying more for everything because governments are taxing us. With that said, my frustration is showing. We have recommendation 1. Any more questions to the recommendation? Should I call the vote? All in favor? That passes with everyone in favor. Did I say that right? Okay. Recommendation 2. Councillor Raven? Don't need a seconder. Any questions to recommendation 2?
Thank
Councillor Patterson?
you, Chair Leonard. So just following due process, so I'll just reiterate, I just don't believe that we should be doing this significant amount of long-term borrowing. I honestly want to confess that I wish I had the forethought to think through this a little bit more, recognizing that building something in 2026 isn't as simple as it was even a number of years ago when I first started on council. So when I look at this number, I think realistically in my mind, for some reason, I think if we're talking about building a new library, it's probably upwards of 5 to 7 million. And I'm really concerned about what that's going to do for my son and future generations. And yeah, honestly, I'm proud of this council for having the forethought to think about investing in facilities for their future. But to your point around taxation, it's unmanageable. And I just think that if I could have done it differently, I probably wouldn't have purchased a new building. But I am proud of the decision that we made. It's a double-edged sword. You want to invest in the kids, but you also want to make sure they can afford to live. So with that, I'm going to vote against the second motion. Thank you.
Councillor Ray?
So it's unfortunate again that we haven't had a chance to have a committee of the whole about the library without the costs. It didn't make sense to do it. So I'm not criticizing anybody for that. But I'm going to say this again, $1.5 million of borrowing is going to cost the taxpayers money. And that's going to affect how perhaps we're able to increase or not increase services at the library. So I'm going to say it again, the more money the community can manage, the less we're going to have to borrow and have to be taxed for that. You know, if you're on the library board or the Friends of the Library, I don't know what kind of fundraising they've done. I know in the past that when it looked like we might be able to move forward with the library, there was a lot of fundraising, a lot of visits to large businesses, et cetera, seeking donations. If you're on the library board or if you're on the Friends of the Library, or if you just don't want taxes to be as high, if we can raise some money, if we can raise that whole $1.5 million or even beyond, because I think there's corporations out there looking to give money. If we can manage that and raise that, that's going to leave a little more money to increase services or not. And if we don't increase services, it's going to save on taxes. So I mean, we have to back this up with borrowing, obviously. But I think that the community can do it. I think we can do it without borrowing, but there's going to have to be some effort and coordinated effort to do so.
Counselor Elliott?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree 100% with Councilor Ray, and that has been discussed ad nauseum at board meetings. Every rock will be turned over. That discussion was had at the last meeting, so the work is being done, and hopefully we're really successful with it. And there's nothing being rolled out as far as who money will be taken from or accepted from. So just to put that out there. Thanks.
I would also like to say, to Councillor Ray's point, it is a backstop in my mind. I don't want to borrow $1.5 million. But I'm prepared to go with the recommendation so that we do have some security around it. Because it is difficult. We haven't had a discussion. We don't know what the costs are going to be. We haven't seen anything. And this year, 2026, we've put the 1.5 to come out of the RBA. So I really think, this borrowing discussion will happen with the new council going into 2027. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Welsh, but that's how I see it playing out. So that decision will be able to be made by that council. And there is still money in the RBA. They can have that discussion down the road. So in my mind, it really is a backstop, like Councillor Ray said. Mr. Welsh, you want to add anything?
Yeah, just with the decision to go ahead with the library project, and we're requiring construction for it. Before we're going into the actual construction phase, we got to make sure we have secured funding. And with the way we shifted the 1.5 million of RBA to be spent at first, will give us some future flexibility in this. But before any ground is broken on that project to move forward, we have to make sure we at least have the $3 million available prior to do it, because it'd be a very unfortunate effort to start going through that process and having to cease operations partway through a project. So hopefully with the looking for grants available, seeing other fundraising opportunities, keeping costs under control, we can potentially reduce that debt kind of going forward. Because if we've noticed the airport, the debt incurred by the airport and the kind of operating deficit, or it's one of the burdens right now challenging the airport. So just kind of planning this going forward and kind of being prudent with that. So that is something to think of. But unfortunately, if we're going through this project, we have to have $3 million available before we crack ground, or otherwise we have to sit with the building empty and reassess what to do.
I appreciate that clarity. You said it much better than I did. So yeah. Councillor Ray.
Yeah, just a question through staff, because Councillor Elliott kind of brought up who we would accept from. If we're having a committee of the whole in the library, seeing the costs and everything, is it council's role to, our naming rights up for grabs, that kind of thing? And, there are perhaps some corporations that some people in the community wouldn't want to accept from. So are we going to be able to have that discussion?
And I'll let Ms. LeBlanc join if she has anything to add, but right now our intention is to bring basically the costing for the library to council in a regular meeting. So it's one, as we've gone through the community engagement process with the consultants and looked at the needs of the library, as well as basically the costing constraints that we're going to be confined to. We think that we'll soon have that final costing estimate and that final recommended library design. So that would be the intention at this point in time, is to bring that to council at a regular council meeting rather than a committee of the whole.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ray. Councillor Ray, sorry.
Well, I guess it would be appropriate to have that discussion at that time as well then. I'm probably looking more to Mr. Dewar and the mayor, but just to keep that in mind if we're thinking about how long the meeting might go, that's probably going to be a fairly big discussion.
Thank you. Mayor Antro.
Yeah, maybe go at this backwards. I think it's absolutely a conversation that council should have. The building belongs to the town. It belongs to the corporation of the town, and it belongs to the community. So it's definitely a worthy conversation. It's kind of a somber meeting. We're talking about money and taxation. And at the same time, if I recall, this table is pretty enthusiastic about a building and the opportunity to build a library. The funding that, or the cost we were looking at when we were proposing to build a new library was in the neighborhood of $16 million. So we're going to deliver a project that the community wants at a fraction of the cost that we thought we were going to face before. That's actually pretty positive. There's no way we do it for free. So that's one thing. So yes, we can discuss all the funding. I think we ought to discuss, and council should be a part of that. You know, are there fences around how we fundraise? Yes, we should talk about that. Back to the borrowing bylaw, though, I just wanted to get some clarity after what Chair Leonard said about when that decision is made. This recommendation is about preparing the borrowing bylaw. And I've forgotten the discussion on whether or not this requires voter consent. So does this one require voter consent?
No, in 2025, the rules change around, what's it, names off the top of my head, I really did electoral approval or voter assent for this one due to the capacity of debt an organization carries. Double checked in, speaking with MFA quite a lot about this one, but we are below that threshold for issuing this without voter consent. So that's one big thing to factor in. So we'll be okay with that process, but yeah, so we're okay with that. We don't require voter assent to do the 1.5 million borrowing.
Okay, thank you for that. With that clarity, then I guess when I'm sitting here, I think we're making this decision that it's okay. So Mr. Welsh just said that, you know, before we begin construction on a project, we have to have the funding available. So I appreciate what council's saying about, you know, we could offset the borrowing by having money flow in. But right now, when I see voting on this, I'm voting for this. That's what's in front of us. And the picture might get better, but it might not. And so I think we need to know that that's what we're voting on right now, is we're giving authority to staff to have a $3 million fund. It's identified from 2 sources, and we're okay with it. And if somehow there's a windfall, that's great. And if there's not, this is how we're going to pay for it. So so when I vote, that's what I'm voting on.
Yes, I apologize if I wasn't clear. I mean, I was saying it's a backstop, but my intention, my personal intention would be to not have the town borrow the one up to 1.5. And hopefully there is fundraising in the community to help. Anybody else? All right, recommendation 2 is on the table. All those in favor? Opposed? Counselor passes with Counselor Patterson opposed. And it looks like that's it. Oh, Mayor Atro.
Yeah, sorry, I just can't stop talking. I just wanted to acknowledge, like, this has been a big process and a challenging process. Mr. Welsh talked about some of those things. And I think Councillor Leonard and Councillor Buikema, who have shared the duties as the finance chairs. And, you know, we'll have another crack at this. You outlined the meetings. We'll talk about setting the taxation rates next time. But everyone's feeling the strain. I think, you know, in response to what we heard from our public gallery, it's not that council's unaware, and I think staff is aware too, that we're trying to do the best job we can and at the same time deliver the services that people need. So I just want to acknowledge the work and the intensity that went into this. You know, I'm looking at Mr. Welsh, but the budget is a bit of a team effort. Nobody escapes, I think, the budget meetings and the hard looks. So thank you for that. And we'll be discussing how we you know, where we get the money from the next time round. And those aren't easy discussions. And at the same time, we are delivering a lot of service for the money, and we need to be able to carry that forward as well. So there's lots being done by the municipality for the funds that we take in. Thanks, Chairman.
Thanks, Mayor Atro. Yeah, so I guess we're wrapping up. I need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Raven, you've moved everything tonight. All those in favor? Okay, we're adjourned.